Jessica, and we're really excited to share with you our brand new podcast, Safari and Scaled. Our past was just reptiles, and I don't want to say just reptiles because reptiles are awesome, but in our new podcast, we're going to explore amazing avenues. We're going to explore nature. We're going to explore conservation and recycling. Stay tuned for our amazing first episode. Our guest has got something amazing up her sleeves. I don't think her dress actually had sleeves. She was the fashionista and a garbagista. And she started the first trash dress. We're super excited to have her on. I like to throw that at you.
Well, we are here with Elizabeth Tran, and I met her at a TEDx event. So she gave an amazing talk on trash fashion. And right away, I knew that she was someone that we should talk to. So Savannah and I really want to get into reach more of the general public. And for me, I've always assumed that people who love animals and reptiles were very conscious about conservation and waste and doing what we can to protect the planet. And that is not always the case. So a lot of people aren't aware of how this can impact the animals that we love, how it can impact their stability in the wild. So we wanted to talk with Miss Elizabeth and see what she's doing and all of the exciting things that she's accomplished. So can you tell us a little bit, Elizabeth, how you started on this journey? I know you started at a very young age. So we both work with kids, so that's really inspiring to us.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. So I started Teens Go Green when I was about 12 years old, but I think the real spark was on my drive up. I did a trip from Miami to Orlando with my family on vacation, and I noticed what I thought were mountains that turned out to be Mount Trashmore. And that is one of the largest man-made landforms in South Florida, which is over 200 feet high. That's over 20 stories if you're comparing any buildings, which isn't really popular in that Broward County area. And I started to realize that there is so much trash just alone in that one community, in that one municipality. Just imagine the entire state of Florida, the entire United States of America and the world. So I tried to get involved with a lot of different environmental nonprofits at the time, but they would tell me, unfortunately, you're a bit too young to volunteer with these kids. We have liability issues. We need parental supervision for you to be involved in these organizations, which is very respectable. But, I still wanted to do something to feel like I could help with the minimal waste mission, the zero waste lifestyle. So a couple friends of mine and I started Teens Go Green. We started the website with fun facts on how we can reduce, reuse, recycle. And it went from speaking with kids at Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and different nature camps and activities on to then growing because I was also simultaneously involved in pageants and modeling, which was very different. Nobody really sees those two worlds, synchronize often. And but I also had an equally large passion for that as well, to then put together trash fashions. And I think that's really what got a lot of people excited. So we would have Earth festivals and events where we would wear those trash fashions, and it would just spark people's attention and bring them to our booth, our little table to explain what we do with minimal waste. And then we would have little trash fashion shows and the kids would participate in that, which was very fun and fulfilling as well.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh. I remember that, or I can think of like driving past, because I lived in Orlando when I was a kid and we used to go down to the Keys all the time. And I remember seeing that mountain, and we don't have mountains here in Florida.
That's
so
exactly
you're like, there's a mountain. And then you're like, that's
Mm-hmm.
full of trash. Like, it's so crazy. That's so cool. Well, not cool that it inspired you, but it's amazing that effect has on a lot of people. So
absolutely. It's because it's when you see the trash, you realize it. And that was something that I mentioned in the TED Talk, that the saying is true, that out of sight, out of mind. And our society really constructs, for the sake of at least looking clean and sanitary, trash is a very hidden concept. Everything is inside a black or white plastic bag. Then it's inside a garbage bin. Then it's inside a garbage chute. And then in the dumpsters, we don't want to see it too. It is an eyesore. I get it. But because we don't see that, we get the side effect of, oh, okay, I'm just going to throw it away anyways. It doesn't even matter. Right now, in a few weeks, I'm moving to another home, and even figuring out how to properly discard my furniture, people are like, oh, just throw it in the dumpster. And I'm like, I can't, that's totally against my ethos. But even doing that, it is actually a real hindrance to find recycling drop-off locations to place the items, or, which area actually does recycle glass. I have to go find it at a Wawa gas station to recycle my glass properly. And then because of that, I'm now bringing my own glass containers to refill my kombucha. Like, there's so many little things. Like, there are sources out there, but they're very hard to find.
Mm-hmm.
Right. No, definitely. It makes a big difference. And growing up in Florida, which we're all, from different parts of Florida, we are surrounded by water. So where does that trash go? Where does it all end up in our waterways? So it's crazy to think, we go to the beach now, and they've passed some legislation in Pinellas County. So like St. Pete, they're not doing plastic straws, but it is crazy to think that like those they fly off into the ocean constantly on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
So pageants in Miami, my goodness, that's amazing. So you talked about, trash being hidden and kind of being like something that we kind of tuck behind. So you did the exact opposite with it. You took trash from being this like hidden, kind of dark, dirty secret and put it in the forefront in fashion. And so, we see it on like, Project Runway now, where we see that they do trash competitions, but you got to do that as a teenager, and that was like your own idea, or what really inspired that? That's amazing.
I guess in a way, maybe it was my own idea, but I think maybe it wasn't.
All recycle ideas.
Sorry. In Project Runway. Yeah, it was recycled. But in a way, so I was at my own, it was another pageant competition where they're like, you can redesign this dress any way you want. A lot of people add rhinestones, they add feathers, they, do some cute DIY projects. And I was 13 at the time. I was kind of lazy. I was kind of cheap. I didn't want to go out to Michael's and get some, craft products together. So like, I just looked at whatever was around my room, and there was some old magazines, some craft glue. And I was already doing these Teens Go Green things. I was making origami paper cranes. At the time, there was a tsunami that hit Japan, and we were like, oh, let's make origami paper cranes. And we used the magazines that we already had. So I was like, okay, why don't we use those same magazines to make, a cute little outfit? I think at the time, like Lady Gaga was at her peak, and she had this really cool origami dress. It wasn't made out of recycled paper, but in my head, I was like, it could be made out of paper. Like, I want to make something like that. And then I realized with the tabling and the activities I did for Teens Go Green and the volunteerism, trash fashion sticked the most to people's heads. Everybody was like, I want to see it. I want to model. I want to participate. And for me, it was so easy. The material's free. Anybody can make it at home. It's super accessible. It's super welcoming. I think another important thing about the sustainability aspect, Jessica, when you introduced, I thought it was interesting how you were saying, some people in the conservation space may not really look into minimal waste. I think it's also the same in reverse. A lot of people in the minimal waste side may not be looking into animal conservation, but everything goes hand in hand. And especially in these fields, there's tons of overlap because as you were saying, Savvy, like the waste that we accumulate will then go into the oceans, will then go into the beaches. I look in my beach cleanups, I would say 85% of the waste that I collect at a beach cleanup is microplastics, which is even worse because people are going to, ingest it. It's going to be ingested in animals that people are going to ingest, and, all the bioaccumulation. It's, and there's intersectionality in everything we do, whether it's public health, whether it's, even feminism. Like, there's so many aspects and components that can really integrate and come together. So I'm glad you brought that up, Jessica, because I think that's something really important to address, and for your podcast to kind of open that door.
Right. Yeah. Because, and like I said, I always just assumed, and even like the kids that I work with, I remember the first time it really like hit me, we were driving, taking the kids on a trip, and one of the kids threw like a chip bag out the car window. And I was like, I stopped the car. I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, what do you mean? And like, I think that it just never clicked. Like, it's not that he was intentionally like, trying to harm our planet. I just think that there's not enough resources out there for kids. We don't really teach it in school. Like, yes. I was lucky because I was raised kind of towards like always like respect the planet, but not everyone has been raised that way, and it's not really taught in school like it should be. So and it's hard as someone who cares about the planet and wants, and it's hard, as it beats you down, I think, because you think, I'm just one person. What difference can I make? And I even fight that sometimes. My husband, he hates the paper straws. He hates them. And he's like, the straws are already made. It doesn't matter if I use one right now. They've already been produced. The companies have already bought them. It's not going to matter if I take one. And even trying to convince him, it really beats you down as someone who wants to work in these fields and wants to make a difference, because like, if I can't convince him, how am I going to make a difference in this world? So I think it is important for us to just to make it more accessible to the public, to say like, hey, the trash is hidden, but it's there. And I remember taking, and like, I've always been aware of it, and I remember seeing the trash, the Mount Trashmore as a kid. But one thing,
I never heard that name. I love it.
Yeah. One thing I didn't realize was the piles in the ocean. What are they called?
Trash Island. Yeah.
Yeah. I had no idea even about that. And I'm someone who works like towards conservation and has always made it kind of a priority in my life. And I mean, I just found out about that a few years ago, and it blew my mind. Like, I knew there was garbage in the ocean, but at that scale, I had no idea that because I think it's 3 times the size of Texas now. The
Great Pacific garbage.
Yes. Great Pacific.
It's awful. And you know what? I can't even blame you, because I feel like our society and our education kind of does that on purpose. I don't want to throw conspiracy theories and things, but it's almost like we can't take responsibility for our past actions. Mm-hmm. But regardless, we need to do something about it now, whether it's just even having this conversation, or, if the paper straw doesn't work, okay, can we try metal straws? They work as really good stirrers too. Yes, they're so good.
I love the algae straws, actually, speaking of that. And I think that's kind of cool when you talk about conservation and nature. We problem solve that I am with your husband. I hate paper straws. They dissolve. We got daiquiris with the kids the other day, and I was like halfway through the pina colada, and it like there was nothing. You couldn't, and they were tiny. But then I went back to the bar, and they had the algae straws, and those are amazing. So they're made out of an alginate, from like seaweed, and they dissolve over time, but they have a feel of plastic. And I'm like, there you go. It's the best of both worlds. So yeah, I mean, it's crazy if you actually address the problem instead of sweeping it under the rug,
right.
You can problem solve.
Yeah. And I think too, one of my favorite quotes is, instant gratification will never supersede long-term growth. And that's something that I kind of apply in general to my life, to like stop using social media, or, like reach my larger goals and don't get too distracted. But even in terms of sustainability, as you're saying, when there's environmental issues, a lot of people try to find these quick fixes or short-term solutions. Here in Miami, one of the biggest things is sea level rise. And instead of trying to, really address the climate crisis and what we can do, they're instead buying these like almost like dam structures and things so that water can be pushed down, or raising the elevation of Miami Beach up, or moving our buildings in certain ways. And it's so expensive. And in the long term, it's not really going to help our case. So I think it's really important for us, and I think this is something I heard on another eco podcast as well. In our political structure, people only have a 1 to 2 year short term to address certain solutions. But the thing is, we need them to be long-term solutions for generations to pass. So it's something that we have to keep in mind and make sure stays relevant, or at least I will finish step 1 of this overarching goal, and whoever takes my place next will finish step 2. and so on and so forth, or will continually progress to improve it to reach this major overarching goal that everybody can agree on, which is also a whole nother thing that I will not get into.
No,
Yeah,
totally. And it's scary to think with all the plastic in our foods, like we talked about, they're saying that the nutritional content, the nutritional content of our food today is 25% of what it was 100 years ago. And so when you talk about obesity in America and health in America, besides just having plastics and chemicals in your diet, your body craves those minerals. It craves that nutrition. So it actually creates an insatiable almost appetite because our bodies are craving these vitamins that aren't available. So, addressing, like you say, our garbage, our food system, that's with everything. In the reptile business, we supplement every animal with vitamins. And people don't realize we have to do that in the farming industry too. And if we don't supplement, they have no way to get these vitamins because they're not available in the soil anymore. We're not creating these, we're not creating full systems. We just hide everything. We're just, hiding our trash. We're hiding our farming.
And it's
really like our generation is the one that's got to figure out what to do with it because, what's going to happen in 100 years, you've lost 75% of, your vitamin content. I mean, I can't imagine in 100 years how much garbage we've accumulated.
Yeah. And I'm curious too, because I'm not so familiar with the reptile industry. Do you guys have an issue with reptiles consuming microplastics or even some of the trash that we have in society? I am curious to see where further interconnectedness aligns.
I don't know that there's an issue so much in the reptile industry or not that we're aware of, but part of the reason why we started, Savannah and I work on the Reptile Youth Alliance is because reptiles aren't studied like other animals. There's not a lot of, because of the negative perception that reptiles have, there's really a lack of funding for any type of research done on reptiles. But I do know, I previously worked with dolphins, and I know that there's a huge issue with marine mammals consuming a lot of the microplastics because they're in the ocean. And like you said, even though they're not directly eating plastic, although I did work on a few necropsies where they had eaten plastic bags, but they are eating fish that have consumed the plastic. So it's a huge issue for the marine mammals. But I mean, Savannah, do you know of reptiles? Are there been
not with eating? I think my big problem, like Jessica was saying, that there's like a disconnection with environmental, activism and the reptile industry in a way that, like, I was really surprised that when you go to a reptile convention, all of the animals are in plastic deli cups.
Yeah.
And all of the food containers, everything is very like throwaway. And so I was very surprised with people who are, they love animals, they love nature, that they consumed and produced so much plastic. I worked for one of the largest reptile stores. That's when I got started in the industry, and we were doing shows all over the country and all over the Southeast, but I was just so surprised on how much was just thrown away. And it's a lot of plastic, a lot. They keep things in deli cups. And then actually, one second, I'll show you. I feel guilty bringing this out when you're here.
Oh, you're fine.
But they use deli cups a lot of times to store things. And then it's a one size fits all lid. So what reptile keepers do is they buy specific lids that are vented. So they'll buy vented, or this is a cloth and vented lid, but they'll do that. And then they'll have little geckos in there. Or this is an example of a baby jumping spider enclosure. So people keep a lot of their animals in plastic. Keepers keep a lot of bigger animals in plastic because it's cheaper to get plastic bins and modify them. But we in the reptile industry contribute a lot to the plastic industry and a lot of waste. So it's a weird conundrum. And we're kind of looking, I know a lot of people care and are trying to figure out what are better alternatives, because this is just really what's most functional at this point.
Exactly. And I mean, it's hard because to me, I think, oh, maybe you could use a mason jar, but then I'm like, can they breathe? What if it breaks?
And it's not cost
You know?
effective.
Like, and the cost effective as well. So I understand. And I'm even curious, like, is it like the takeout food plastic number 2 and 5 at the bottom, or almost like a solo cup type of plastic? Because, you know, even as I told you about my moving, sometimes it's so hard. Does it say a number on there? Like a little triangle?
Yeah, it's PPP number 5.
Okay, so not every program has it, but even one that I work with here in Miami called Lady Green Recycling, they recycle clean and dry takeout food plastic, which is essentially number 2 and number 5. So certain small business recycling programs may be able to melt it. And I think, you know, this kind of goes back to the whole education thing. The reason why it's reduce, reuse, recycle, and recycle is the last of like the hierarchy of sustainability is because our recycling programs, unfortunately, are not capable of recycling everything that we have. So even if our Starbucks cup says recycle, even if our solo cup says recycle, more than likely your county can't recycle it, and then therefore it's contaminating it, and then they can't recycle anything in that recycling bag.
Right. So yeah, we're dealing with that a lot in Lake County. I know they've cut a lot of our recycling programs. So and like you said, if it's mixed in, then everything's ruined. So,
exactly.
And people don't realize that. I think a lot of people
it's a lack of the education capability of even sharing that type of information, just like you guys sharing information on reptile research or even seeking reptile research as well. We are so inundated with media information in so many different ways that it's hard for us to just focus on one thing. And I think with like Lady Green Recycling, yes, they can recycle that type of plastic, which maybe we can connect and I can introduce you to them later if maybe they can collect your plastic. They actually do a recycling rebate program where if you ship the plastic to them, each one, as long as it's clean and dry, it's 1 to 5 cents, the range. I don't know which one is 5 cents and which one is 1 cent, but hey, like you get money back too. Like it's a win-win. And would be cute if you have like a snake convention in Miami, if they were there and they set up a bin or something along those lines. But point being is they can only succeed as their small business if the consumer takes the effort to clean the bin, to make sure it's dry, to not have sticker labels on it so that they can melt it and then turn it into other products. So yeah, it's
and that's where it's a sticky situation too, because we're not dealing with regular food in these. So some of these cups get very dirty by the end of it.
Yeah.
Get a little stinky.
And
I want to ask too, what do you know about like recycling fraud? Like you know, facilities saying that they are able to recycle certain materials and then not actually fulfilling that. Is that a big deal in the industry? I know you're well versed, so
I would say it's kind of wrapped under closed doors, and it's a very conflicting thing for me because my profession is in marketing and my passion is in sustainability. So I would say that's more of a greenwashing type of thing. All businesses now, and even in Wall Street, you know, there is an obligation of ESGs and environmental sustainability, and all businesses need to have that Tesla futuristic sustainability component, which is amazing. And I'm glad they're at least advocating for sustainability, but we do not have a clear enough audit structure, whether it is for those recycling companies to say, like, do you talk the talk? Like, we don't have a system that can really, you know, all right, well, prove it. Let me see if this follows all the code compliances. And then we can, you know, give you that LEED certification or that, you know, seal of approval that, yes, you are really able to recycle this and we can trust you to put these items in there. It's kind of a crapshoot, unfortunately, at the moment. And I really think that goes for any sort of sustainability, like with my other thing for sustainable fashion, you know, trash fashion, organic cotton, secondhand clothing. There's so many different ways people go about it. And maybe it is a big factory conglomerate company just saying that they are quote unquote recycled and they just put a logo on their shirt, but it's, you know, still fast fashion and made of synthetics and whatever, you know, like we still have a long way to go.
Yeah. And it is the individual people, you know, behind the scenes. Like I used to manage a Radio Shack and I moved from one store to another. And we'd have people come in, we recycled batteries. And I know that a gentleman came in and we only recycled rechargeable batteries, nickel metal hydrate and cadmium. And we didn't take the regular disposable. And I know that there was a gentleman who was really upset when I told him that, because he had been taking his batteries there for 5 years. And the employees had simply just thrown all of his batteries in the dumpster. And he was just like so upset. He had went out of his way to come recycle his batteries because he thought right. And they just didn't want to deal with telling him no. So instead of just telling him no, that's not what we recycle, and being honest with him, they were just simply throwing them in the trash. And I felt so bad. I had actually lived in Portland, Oregon, like previously, like right before then. And I was, you'd get a finger shook at you if you didn't have your own shopping bag with you. I had a lady go off on me one day. I was like, I just got off of work. I reuse these for trash bags. I'm so sorry. But yeah, I was just felt so bad because this gentleman went out of his way to do that. And then here it was, it wasn't being upheld. And so, yeah, it is the individual, and it definitely, that makes a difference. So what did you do, or what were the steps that you took to kind of spread your message for people out there who are interested? I mean, you've been very successful, and I can't believe, starting off as a preteen in Miami and going so far with it. It's such an accomplishment. It's really inspiring. So, what were the steps or what's advice that you could give to somebody, maybe a teenager, a kid, or even somebody in their 20s? What's kind of a first step you can take, you think? I
was 12 in Orlando, and I had the support of my mother. She was a tremendous guide and able to, drive me to the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts that I would go speaking to, because I didn't have a license by then. But in terms of reaching out, especially in this digital generation that we're in right now, at the time for me, having a website domain was good, because that was really the only thing there was. Like, I was too young for MySpace, so I couldn't even send that type of outreach at the time. But I think, even taking advantage of newer platforms, TikTok, I've seen become very successful and popular. I think actually sharing how I made my garbage gown was what led my family to have the reality show on TLC. And yes, it was silly and it was about us being cheap, which we are, but we can be cheap and sustainable. And in the finale of the show, my sister was able to do a trash fashion photo shoot, and we were doing it at a junkyard. And I thought that was a really cool, weird, but cool way to share that message of sustainability. So I think whatever message or overarching goal, whether you're young or old, like if you have the capability of a phone and Wi-Fi and a recording device, know what your message is, know what you stand for, and find ways to apply it to things that are modern or trendy or something that might catch some people's eye. So a trash fashion on TikTok, for me, always goes viral. It's a bit time consuming to put together, but the end goal of spreading that message is well worth it. And I think, I actually had other goals in mind when I competed for Miss Florida USA in my garbage gown, was to be on BuzzFeed or Now This. These were the mainstream platforms that I saw that could really, share messages and inspire other people. And that's like what I set my sights on. And even like Ocean Drive magazine in Miami, like those were the three media outlets that I
Drive magazine.
Like those were the places that I wanted. And you know what? I never got it. I reached out, I sent the PR, I had the pictures, whatever, and it didn't go through. But, through setting that goal and putting myself out there in different places and, wearing garbage gowns and sharing how I made it on TikTok and having that type of outreach, instead, I was able to be on TLC, speak at a TEDx conference, and now do a podcast with you guys. So it's, I truly believe God works in mysterious ways. As long as you work hard towards your goals, if your goals kind of shift, and they might even shift for the better, I don't know. But for me, like speaking at TEDx was a huge dream of mine. And I was like, I never even thought I would be capable or something like that would be possible for me.
You guys are the coolest. I was like, what? TEDx girls, hey. I couldn't believe when Jessica was hosting it and she didn't even like mention it. She was all like, yeah, whatever. TED Talk. I think it's so cool. I love TED Talks. They're so inspiring. And Miami, I will have to say, like, I love reptiles, I love nature. One way that I kind of escaped growing up in Florida and kind of growing like I grew up in Orange County, Orlando, but lived in the gated
I grew up
community,
there
so
too, so I'm familiar. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I've always been like a Housewives fan because it reminded me of my childhood. And so it's funny because they just did the Housewives of Miami, and I could totally see like one of those girls wearing like your trash gown, because it is awesome. It is gorgeous.
Beautiful.
Like that's,
Thank
I mean,
you.
I was, when she said trash gown and then I looked at the picture, it was night and day of what I thought in my mind. I mean, that is high fashion for sure. So
Thank you. It was definitely inspired by a lot of high fashion designers. I have a huge love, and I go gaga for like any sort of Met Ball gowns, Met Gala red carpet couture and things. And I seek a lot of inspiration from those. So I love putting together ideas, but I don't necessarily have the bandwidth to make a couture gown. I got CDs for days and an old hazmat suit that I could make a dress out of. But yeah, I definitely like, that type of challenge. I think it's really fun.
Well, Elizabeth, we think you are so inspiring. We are so happy that you were able to come on the show with us today, and we definitely want to have you back for some updates. And we do want to make some connections with your recycling.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it'd be great. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because we do.
Oh, and what's the name of the TLC show? Because I'm going to binge watch this afterwards with my kids.
I don't know.
My 7-year-old's going to be like, yeah.
It's so freaking cheap.
Oh, it's so freaking cheap.
There was this extreme cheapskates.
So there's cheapskates, and then there's so freaking cheap. It was like this. Okay, were you guys on the first one too? Like, did you have your own episode of the original?
This one is a docu-series of 4 different families, cheap families, if you will, and how they go about their day to day. It is
resourceful, not cheap.
Okay, yes, resourceful, frugal, whatever,
That's awesome.
But in the end, I'm like, I love the fact that we were still able to share that message of trash fashion and sustainability, because that's really what I came in there like wanting to promote. And that's how the TLC casting director found us and was like, that's a really cool dress. We're looking for cheap families. Are you interested? And it was a really fun journey.
That's awesome.
It's so cute. Well, thank you so much. And I love that you combat the fast fashion with the trash fashion. It's so well, like, it's perfect. Phrase and everything. Thank you so much. We can't wait to have you back.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thanks.
We're not going to hang up.